right, so let's see. Is this the first one in the packet I gave you? It's a rectangle. A rectangle has a length of 12 meters and a width of 400 centimeters. What is the perimeter in centimeters? So this is a unit conversion problem. This is before you guys got to me. You should have done a lesson on dimensional analysis. So look, this is not a difficult conversion here. How many centimeters are there in a meter? How many? Yeah, correct. There's 100. So you should know that 12 meters is 1200 centimeters. So you don't have to really show work, but I'm guessing whatever teacher showed you how to do this was like, oh, 12 meters. Okay, then there are, 100 centimeters in 1 meter. And then the meters will cancel out. Is that the way you guys did it before I got here? So the 12 times 100 gives you 1200 centimeters. Now the other thing is that they want the perimeter. So the perimeter of a rectangle, you could add up all the sides if that's easier for you to remember. But there actually is a formula for it. Since a rectangle has equal lengths and equal widths, and there's 2 of each, they say 2 lengths plus 2 widths. So you could just say perimeter is 2 times 1200 plus 2 times 400, right? That's 2400 plus 800, which is 32. I should have left this one as free response, but no choice. I know that there was one in here that nobody got right, so I'm not sure which one it is. I have to go back. It wasn't that one. It was like somewhere. It was more towards the middle. Jill swam 200 meters in. Oh, that was a good one. Jill swam 200 meters in 2 minutes and 42 seconds. If each lap is 50 meters long, which is most likely to be her time in seconds per lap. So the key is to figure out how many laps there are. So let's see. You don't have to be this fancy, but if you want to be this fancy, so if we want to because we want seconds per lap. We'll convert minutes and seconds into only seconds. So here, let's do that one first. That one probably will be easier for you. So 2 minutes. If you were to do dimensional analysis here, we want the minutes to cancel out, so we want that to be on the bottom. And we want to turn that into seconds. How many seconds are there in a minute? 60. So there's 60 seconds in 1 minute. But then you have to add those extra 42 seconds at the end. So when the minutes cancel out, 2 times 60 is 120, plus 42 is 160. So when we figure out seconds per lap, that's going to be the one on the top. But now we have to convert meters into laps. Not necessary. Look, I can tell by looking at this, there's going to be 4 laps. Because I know that 200 divided by 50 is going to be laps. I'm not expecting you to do this, but if you want to see it applied. So they're giving us 200 meters. I need the meters to cancel out, so I would put that on the bottom. And there is 50 meters, they tell you, in 1 lap if you want to convert them. So I need 1 meters on top, 1 meter would be on the bottom. 200 divided by 50 is just 4. So if we have 162 seconds divided by 4 laps, then what would be the most likely one? We'll just do 162 divided by 4, because that would give you seconds per lap. 35, 35.5. Oh yeah, wow, thank you. 40.5. Okay, so which of those is closer to 40.5? Ah, that's what it was. Some eye make. Yeah, you're gonna need something stronger than because of the rain. The rain got you, and then your eye makeup started running. Any questions there? A model of a house is shown. What is the perimeter in units of the model? I know you haven't taken geometry yet, but even if you were to take an educated guess, these little slashes here being congruent. So if the right side is 12x plus 3, the left side is 12x plus 3. If up here this is 6x minus 4, this is 6x minus 4. Now the thing though is when you're looking for perimeter, okay, even though it appears that this is 14x plus 13, they don't necessarily tell us, but even if they were to tell us, the thing is that is not on the perimeter. What does perimeter mean? What single word, even though they're not exactly the same, but what word do most people think of when they think of perimeter? It starts with out and then with side. The outside. They think of area, they think of inside. When they think of perimeter, they think of outside. So there's 5 sides on the outside. That's what I would have to add up. Instead of writing this all out for you so we can just get moving, if you go around the world and add up all the x's, you know, what is 6x plus 12x plus 14x plus 12x plus 6x? What do you get? What do all the x's add up to? 50 x's. And then when you add up all the constants, negative 4 minus 4 plus 3 plus 13 plus 3, what is that, 11? Of all the ones I'm going over, I think the highest percentage was 44 of all of these. So everything I go over here was missed by more than half of you. I know that's not a big group, so I only have one Algebra 1 class. A garden measuring 8 by 12 will have a walkway. Well, this is a good one to draw a picture. This is a great one to draw a picture. Now you're going to get this wrong. I can guarantee you. See these walkway problems all the time. So when it measures 8 by 12, we're going to assume it's a rectangle, right? But then it has a walkway going around. So the walkway has a uniform width. Reed, you might need help with this one. What does that word uniform mean? It's not something you wear. The same. It's the same going around. So whatever the width is here, it's the same as the width here, width here, width there. It's all the same going around. And then we said that this is 8 by 12. And the area covered by the garden and the walkway is 192 square feet. What is the width of the walkway? So this is an area problem. How do you find the area of a rectangle? Because even if you add the walkway together, this outside shape is still a rectangle. How do you find the area of a rectangle? Length times width. But they're not asking you for the area here. What are they asking you for? The width of the walkway. Now, I actually have defined that for you here already. I'm using a little w for width of walkway. So let's see how we can substitute to make this work. They do give us the area. The overall big area is 192. Can you come up, because now I just need to do something times something. One of those somethings will be the length. One of those somethings will be the width, right? Let's say the first one is the length. Give me an expression that I can use to describe how long it is from here to there. Well, I'm using W, but yes. Okay. It is the 12 that's here where the garden is. But then how many W's does it take to get from one side to the other? 2 of them. So I would say 2W plus the 12. Read. This is little reread here. She wants to walk over to the other side. You're going to tell me how far you walked, right? As you start walking and you get to here, how far have you walked? How far have you walked if you walk from there to there? W. How far have you walked if you keep on walking? How far have you walked when you get to there? The W plus 12. This is 12 from here to here. And then when you finish this little strip, when you finish walking that, you walk W again. So I don't know what W is, but it is a number. I just don't know it. How many W's have you walked? 2 of them, plus the 12 from the garden. If now Reed says, hey, I need to keep on exercising, so now I'm gonna walk up here. To get from this bottom part of the garden up to the top part, what would you have to walk? How wide is that? Again, you'd have to walk a W. At the end, you walk a W, but in between the W's, how far would you walk? 8. Yeah. So this is gonna be 2W. Where that little W is what I decided to call the width of the walkway. If I can find the little W, I know how wide the walkway is. This is going to end up being a quadratic equation. We like parentheses with our equations if the other side has a 0. Then we can just make each factor equal to 0. But because there's a 192 there, I'm going to have to distribute. So 192 equals 4W squared plus 16W plus 24W plus 96. If I combine the W's in the middle, that gives me plus 40W plus 96. There are about 4 different ways that we learned how to solve quadratic equations, but the 2 most common, which are factoring and quadratic formula, both require you to put all the terms on one side. So unless somebody here fell in love with completing the square, which I really doubt, he'd be the first person I've ever met who loves to complete the square, I'm going to do minus 192. So now move everything to the right side. So 0 is equal to 4W squared plus 40W minus 96. Have I lost you yet, Reed? You still with me? Okay. So, like Anne, for instance, I know Anne loves to factor. Every time I think somebody would use quadratic formula, she surprises me and she uses factoring. But she's in the minority. I would guess factoring is going to work here. It looks like it's going to work. But I'm going to take the approach that I'm like everybody else here. And you guys, you see that 4 in front, and you want nothing to do with factoring. So let's just use quadratic formula. If you use quadratic formula, A would be 4, B would be 40, and C would be negative 96. That reference sheet, Caleb, that is mostly useless. At least one thing it does have is quadratic formula in it. So even if you forget it, it's there. X is equal to negative B. If B is 40, then that would be negative 40 plus or minus the square root of. You already paid attention to this quadratic formula. 40 squared minus 4 times negative 96 over 2 times A, which is 2 times 4. X is equal to negative 40 plus or minus the square root of 60. And for the record, factoring would be much more quick. If you tried factoring and factoring worked, I'd probably be done by now. There is a greatest common factor of 4 that I bring that out and then I'd solve it like this. But I just, from my experience, when people see a leaf, it's not 1, especially even when there is a 1. How many negatives do I see after the square? 2. So I'm going to change to plus, and then you're going to have to help me with this one. Somebody with a calculator tell me what's 4 times 4 times 96. 1536, okay? Over 8. X is equal. Actually, no, I'm here writing X like a fool. Sorry. W equals negative 40 plus or minus the square root of 2136. I'm guessing that would be the perfect square because if it isn't, that means factoring would have never worked. I'm pretty sure factoring would have worked there. What's the square root of 2136? Ready, set, calculate. No, I added it wrong. 3136. Sorry, that should be a 3. And then, so that's perfect, right? Sorry, I just did it wrong. 3136. And you said 56? Okay, so we get W is equal to negative 40 plus or minus 56 over 8. Well, are you guys saying your goodbyes? It's tearful goodbyes and it's making your makeup run? Because I don't think you guys are going to be sitting next to each other for much longer. Quadratic equations can have two solutions. It's very common. But there's a word problem. So these are not just numbers. The numbers have some type of a meaning. In this case, we're looking for the width of a walkway. So what happens here, yes, it's supposed to be plus or minus, and they're both going to give you solutions, but I can tell from looking at this, when I end up using the minus, negative 40 minus 56 is a negative number. Once I divide by 8, I'm still going to have a negative number. Can you have something that is a negative width? No, not exactly. So I'm not going to waste my time with the negative. I'm only going to do the plus in this case. Negative 40 plus 56 is 16. Divided by 8 is 2. On the Google form, you would have just put 2. If you wanted to be more specific, or on the actual EOC, it is in feet. We are measuring in feet. But 2 would have been the correct answer. You could join like a 90s rock group and stuff and wear leather. You could play the bass guitar. A printing company will charge $6 plus 7 cents per page. Another company will charge $24 plus 4 cents per page for the same project. For how many pages will the cost be the same? So this is something called the break-even point. They're giving you two equations and you figuring out where they're the same. What's another word for the same in math? Equal, yeah. So we just got to come up with an equation for each one. The first one is going to be a $6 flat fee plus 0.7. So 0.7 per page means times pages plus 6 would equal 0.04 pages plus 24 is the flat fee. This is linear at least. This is not quadratic. You don't have to worry about anything special or any type of quadratic formula. Let's just put the p's on one side and the constants on the other. Minus 6. So we get 0.03p is equal to 18 divided by 0.03. Someone again. That would be actually I could put this in my head. Is that going to be 660? 600. 600. So p is equal to 600. It would be 600 pages. So for your response on the Google form, you would have just typed in 600. But if this were like an actual EOC, and they have a lot more options available to them than I do when they make the test. So you might need to type in pages. We are measuring in pages. They want to know how many pages. You know that Prince was a really good basketball player. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but Dennis Rodman actually played basketball. Prince didn't, but he could pick up on too. Andrew purchased some drinks and some chips. Each bag of chips cost $2, and each drink costs $2.50. The expression above. So above. That's not above, it's below, but okay. Now, they modeled it for you. So they want to know, what does 2.5y mean? Well, if it's $2 per chips, we're going to assume that X then would have to be the chips. And if it's $2.50 for a drink, then Y has to be the number of drinks. So the variable themselves are just the amount of chip bags, the amount of drinks. The 2 and the 2.5 are the dollar amounts. So if I were to get the dollar amount of the drinks and multiply it by how many drinks are sold, what is that going to mean? What is that going to represent? It should mean how much money you made just from drinks. It doesn't include anything about the chips. So not the number. Okay, so here to watch it. Let's do it this way. Why don't we go through all the answer choices and see if we can define each one? If I want the number of chips purchased, what would represent that? What expression would represent number of chips? It's on the board already. What expression would represent just the number of chips? X. Yeah, this one would just be X. What represents the cost of one drink? Yeah, you could say 250, but here it actually says 2.5. We have to go by what it says in the function. The total amount spent on drinks. Well, yeah, that's going to end up being the answer because the total amount spent is 2.5. Why? But just for fun, if I wanted to define the number of drinks, what would be the number of drinks? Y. So the answer is C. Questions? What are the terms, coefficients, and constants described by the phrase the cost of 6 pizzas, C being the cost of each pizza, and the delivery charge of $5? When you get a pizza delivered, how many times do you have to pay a delivery charge? Assuming that there is one. When you order something on Uber Eats, how many delivery fees do you have to pay? Yeah, but if I were to order 8 pizzas from the same place, how many delivery charges are they going to charge you? Still one. It's a one-time fee. There's one delivery occurring. So the term. So what are the terms, coefficients, and constants described by the phrase? Yeah, and I wish they would have used the word polynomial or expression. Oh, I guess because that's where they get away with it. Because they put what are the term or terms? There's more than one term. If the pizza costs $6 per pizza, that's going to be 60. If the delivery charge is $5, then the entire expression would be 60 and 5. So the terms are 60 and 5, so that knocks out A and D. The coefficient, which we call the number that's in front of a variable, that one's 6. So the 6 is going to be B, and then the constant is 5. A constant is a number that's not attached to a variable. Read, that's confusion face. 6 is the cost of each pizza. I don't know why they're using a C for it, but they decided. Oh no, I'm sorry. Wait, I did this backwards. That is kind of weird. C is the cost of each pizza. 6 is the number of pizzas that they ordered. And then 5 is what it costs for delivery. So they're just basically telling you to dissect and break down that expression into what each one means. So I'm not thrilled with the use of the word term, but because they said terms, meaning there's more than one term allowed, what are the 2 terms that go into the cost? The 60 and the 5. 5 will never change. The 6 depends on how much each pizza costs. So 60. Then the second part of the question is just understanding the difference between a constant and a coefficient. A coefficient is a number that's in front of a variable. A constant is just a number. Don't get that stuff in your eyes, man. It's going to sting. 2 sisters are saving money for a summer vacation. The above represents the growth of each sister's saving account, comparing the growth of each account as lines on a graph. In which week will the lines intersect? So we're looking for the break-even point. trying to think of how I did this. There's two ways you could do this, right? You could do this as like basically trial and error, where in effect you're getting this and turning it into one of these. Plug in 0, see what you get. Plug in 1, see what you get. Plug in 2, see what you get. Plug in 3, see what you get. Or you can get this table and write an equation for the table. If you look at how the money is changing, what word or words can we use to describe how that money is changing? Well, actually, that is a word, but it's not the word. Huh? I'll take that. I was looking for common difference, but I'll take a risk. So that means it's going to be linear. Is that what you were trying to say, Marquise? Were you saying linear? And the nice thing about, if you are going to write the equation on this one, the nice thing is they're already giving you the y-intercept. The y-intercept is 80. So all I have to do is find the slope. So slope would be, let's just do 80 minus 105 over 0 minus 1. Okay, or you can just tell, can you tell by looking at it what it's going up by? 25. So you know the slope's going to end up being 25. Okay, so my equation here would be y equals 25 x plus 80. That's the y-intercept. And then if you just make them equal to each other, if you just say 20, this is kind of what we did on that problem with the pages. You're looking for the break-even point. You want to know when will the lines intersect? When are they equal? 25x plus 80 equals 30x plus 30. Minus 25x minus 25x. All the x's go to the right. Minus 30 minus 30. I like this way better, but I know a lot of you guys just prefer to just plug in and see. But actually, you know what? Plugging in wouldn't work. But you would have had to have kept on going. Because they're not going to be the same until the 10th week. So this was our free response. You would have just typed in 10 weeks. Read? Still confused face? You know, I wrote the equation for this. Once I got that equation, I made it equal to that. I made them equal to each other. The x here stands for weeks. Now, the second, what could have been a follow-up question is they say, okay, well, how much money would they have? If the money is going to be the same, how much money would that be? In which case, you could just plug a 10 into either equation. What is 30 times 10? 300 plus an extra 30, 330. But they weren't asking that. They were just asking in what week. 10. And she still has confused. Can you ask her what she's confused about? Customers at a certain marina can rent a pontoon boat by paying $125 deposit up front and an hourly fee of $25 from the time they take possession. They turn it in up to 10 hours. For the graph of the function, give the intercepts and the extrema, the maximum and the minimum. Okay. Let's define the variables here. So obviously one of them is going to be cost. That tends to be your y. And we have time being measured in hours. So x will be hours, and y is going to be cost. Intercepts are what happens when the other one is 0. Okay, so if 0 hours have gone by, like we are going to rent this boat, but if you have used it for 0 hours, how much are you going to pay? 125, yeah, because you have to have a deposit. So, well, sadly, it looks like that's not already going to give away my answer, but why is it? Let's use a different variable. by paying 125 deposit and an hourly fee of 25. So like if I were to write the equation here, this would be y equals 25x plus the 125. But by saying up to 10 hours, they're just saying that this x can't go beyond 10. So let's see. Yeah, the reason why there is no x-intercept is because if you are going to indeed use the pontoon boat, there is no way to make the cost 0. You're going to have to pay something. That's why they say there's no x-intercept there. Okay. And if you were to look at it on a graph, because you're starting, like if we just look at the first quadrant, this graph has a positive slope. It would look something like that, where it's the y-intercept is 125, and then you're going up. It's just that the domain is going to be limited. You can't go beyond 10 hours. You wouldn't have this arrow here. All right, so let's look at the extremes. Okay, what's the minimum and maximum value of the function? Okay, when you talk about minimum and maximum, you're talking about y. How high and how low. What's the lowest you could pay? 125. So the minimum would have to be 125, which this one also says. The maximum, what's the most amount of time that you can use the pontoon boat? For 10 hours. If I plug in a 10 for x, what is 25 times 10? 250 plus 125. It's 375, the answer here. The scatter plot shows the number of hours, blah, blah, blah. See, at least thank you very much. They at least modeled it for me, so I don't have to worry about doing a line of best fit. In this context, what does the y-intercept best represent? So here's the y-intercept, which would be 50.08. On the y-intercept, it's when x is 0. So x represents time studying, and y is the exam score. What should the y-intercept represent? Is this telling that the y-intercept would be somewhere around here? What would that represent? What would that mean? Y-intercept on any function is what happens when x is 0. Here, x is time study. It's something a lot of you guys should be familiar with. So if you have 0 time studying, what does that y-intercept mean? If you do not study, what does that mean? You should score around 50. So for 0 hours spent studying, a student would score about 50 points. That looks like it's B. You can read through the rest of them. Yeah, see, for every hour spent studying, that's a slope. That would actually be 6.35. If they were to ask you about the slope, for every hour studying, your score is going to go up by 6.35 points for every hour. But what a y-intercept means is if the x is 0, which in this case is hours studying, then you would get whatever the y-intercept is. Kiara, you following along? Writing all this down. What is the correlation coefficient? Okay, well, we don't have a graphing calculator. The reason why I left this on is because you can take an educated guess. Actually, well, this one's. What can we tell by looking at it as far as the line goes? Huh? Yeah, it's definitely going to be negative, so that knocks this out. Okay. Then it can't be this because you can't go beyond -1 or +1. So at least we can narrow it down to 2. Now, what I would say, if you're going to have -0.95, it almost has to be perfectly straight. But that is like right there on -1. You have to have a super strong correlation. These points would have to be like almost, entirely making a straight line. There looks to be a little bit too much fluctuation here. So of the 2 that remain, I would go with C. There's no way to know for sure because we don't have a graphing calculator. So, but that's the one I would go with. It's not perfectly straight. I would say that's. Remember that N when you came showing me the moderate. It's not weak. It isn't weak. It kind of looks like a line, but that looks to be moderate at best. 0.95 is had to be super straight. Sandra sells necklaces at a school craft fair. She uses that equation. Oh, I remember this one. To determine the profit. Based on this equation, how much does she charge for each necklace? So if profit is equal to 7.5 necklace minus 2.25 necklace plus 15. This is a little bit tricky because the thing is, you want to distribute and simplify, but more important here is understanding what profit is. I think that's the more important thing. Do you know how profit is calculated? Like, what profit means? Yeah, profit is revenue minus expenses. How much money you bring in minus however much money left out. So what I'm seeing here, if I'm associating this, okay, where the minuses are, then that would lead me to believe that this was her expense. It cost her $225 per necklace plus an extra $15 on whatever. Who knows what she spent that extra $15 on? Maybe it was like a display stand or something. But that's what her expenses were, and this is where she got her revenue. And if that is indeed the case, how much was she charging per necklace? Yeah, the whole $750. That was a tough one. That's a tricky one. A scientist studied the relationship between the number of trees per acre and the number of birds per acre. He modeled the relationship with a scatter plot. Luckily, they're giving this to me already. I don't have to model anything. For the regression line, that's like another word for the line of best fit. What is the meaning of the slope and the y-intercept? Okay, so which number here is the slope? Okay, so 6 is the slope, and 4 is the y-intercept. 4 is the. So in order to be able to do that, well, we just need to know what x and y mean. So they say that x is number of trees per acre. So x means number of trees per acre, and y is the number of birds. And if we understand that slope is change in y over change in x, that means that the birds would go on top and the trees would be, it's birds per tree. How many birds there are per tree. So that's what the slope is going to be. Slope is going to be the number of birds that are on each tree. And then a y-intercept always means the value of y when x is 0. If x means number of trees, what would that mean? If x is number of trees, what would that mean? It's how many birds there would be with no trees. So let's see, well, I don't know, there's a lot of words. The slope is 6, the slope, okay, so I know it can't be D or B because there they tell you the slope is 4. So 6 means that the average number of birds per acre in an area with no trees, no, it's not going to be that one. Because no trees is y-intercept. So the slope is 6, that means that for every one additional tree, you can expect an average of 6 extra birds, and the y-intercept is 4. Yeah, so it's going to be. Charles runs at a rate of 12 kilometers per hour. Ooh, okay, so perfect. This is just straight up dimensional analysis. This is what you did before you guys ever got to me. So 12 kilometers per hour. Your teacher might have showed that. I don't know how your teacher showed you. They might have arranged it differently. I'll just do it the way I know how to do it. So I got to turn kilometers into meters, and then I got to turn hours into minutes. You can actually do them all at the same time. Let's just do the meters into kilometers first. So I need the kilometers to cancel out. So it means I would put meters on the top. I need the kilometers to cancel. Can I do I have a direct conversion between meters and kilometers? How many meters are there in a kilometer? 1,000. 1,000 meters in 1 kilometer. I'm done with that because the kilometers are going to cancel. Okay. Now, how many hours and minutes? Do we have a direct conversion between hours and minutes? I would want the hours to go on top because I need the hours to cancel. So I know how many minutes there are in an hour. 60. So 60 minutes in 1 hour. That gets the hours to cancel. So the only units that are left are meters per minute. So I just gotta go clean up the numbers. On the top, I have 12 times 1,000, which is gonna give me 12,000. On the bottom, I just have a bunch of ones and a 60. So I know the zeros are gonna cancel. 1,200 divided by 6 is gonna be 200. So I end up with 200 meters per minute. Did your teacher show you? Did they make it look like that, or did they show you a different way? It looked like that. Yeah, this was at the beginning. I wasn't here yet. You would have just typed in 200 on the Google form. A number of apples was shared among every 4 students. Each student was also given 2 pears. Each student received a total of 6 pieces of fruit. Let A represent the number of apples, which equation can also be used to find the number of apples. So let's see, apples plus 2 pears is equal to 6 pieces of fruit. And I know that the number of apples was shared evenly among 4 students. Oh, so that's what it is. So apples divided by 4 students each, because you're dividing the apples, plus the extra, because they're already telling me that each student had 2 pairs. So that 2 is per student. That's just translation. If you're sharing evenly, you're dividing. An arithmetic sequence, this might have been the one that was missed. Let's see who can be clever on this one. What's another word that we use for common difference? We know that this is going to be arithmetic. What's another word we use for common difference? Slope. This is a slope problem. There might be an easier way to do this. I don't know. But I'm just thinking of the way I would. This is a slope problem, right? They tell me that the slope is 4. The common difference is 4. They also tell me that the third term is 10. That's an ordered pair. And then they want to know what is the 6th term. So we're using slope formula. We're just using it a little bit differently. Instead of looking for the m, we're going to look for, in this case, it looks like y2. So you would just say 4 is equal to, subtract the y's on top. Here, let's just do y. Let's do it backwards and get the y in front. So y minus 10 and then 6 over 3, or 6 minus 3. So y minus 10 over 3 times 3 times 3. We get 12. This cancels. Y minus 10. So we go plus 10 and plus 10. 22. I'm guessing without knowing this, most of you would have probably, knowing that the common difference is 4 and the third term is 10, you would have just gone, okay, the fourth term is 14, the fifth term is 18, and then the 6th term would be 22. So this is a more algebraic way of finding it, but you probably could have found it just as easily by doing it here for the last candy. What do we call that when we start counting, just when we come up with a new term based on the term before, recursively? MJ would have been able to get that one right. A tour bus driver takes home 75% of the salary he earns and gives 60% of his tips to the tour guides on the bus. He took home $980 last week in salary and tips. S is the tips and T is the amount of money. S is the driver's salary and T is the total amount of tips. Yeah, I remember this one. The key here is that he gives up 60% of his tips. So how much of his tips is he keeping? If he's giving up 60? No, it's not none. It's 40%. So, and we're talking about what he's earning, so we have to add them. So it's that one there. This one you would have been helped by the fact it was multiple choice. kind of, the only way you're gonna really mess this one up is if you don't know that 40% is 0.4 and you do it like 0.0. A culture of bacteria doubles every hour. If there's 500 bacteria at the beginning, how many will there be after 9 hours? So this is just a regular exponential growth. When the growth factor is that it doubles, we start off with 500, it doubles to the 9th power, and then you write it in. Somebody with a calculator want to help out there? I know 2 to the 9th, I believe, is 512. So 512 times 500. 2256,000. I tried to program. I know some of it is and. I know that you, but I think you actually did right. I know some people love to put those commas and stuff. So I tried to program it to accept commas and not, but I prefer it like this. No commas. I think we'll finish these last 3 before we leave. Which of the following equations represent a reflection over the x-axis? Okay, this is transformation. So x-axis reflection. That means A has to be a negative. Okay, so let's identify A, H, and K. Horizontal shift left 4 units, so H would be -4. But remember that means it's gonna look positive, and vertical shift up 8, so it's gonna be an 8. Oh, and a shrink, Okay, so they don't tell you what the shrink is, but it's multiple choice. So the only A and D do not have compressions. Both B and C do, and they both have 3/4. So it looks like it would have to be that. So then that is the only difference, is that H, that sneaky little H. If H is -4, the one that has a positive there is C. Martha, confusion face? You seem to understand. I remember you doing well with transformation. 2 different functions. Compare the function to determine which one has a greater rate of change. Okay, here the rate of change is just 3. Over here, but here's the sneaky one. It's not going up by 1. So you would have to use slope formula. Pick any 2 points. Let's pick these 2 points here. Subtract the y's on top. So -4 plus 2. Change the sign of the second one. -2 minus 0. So this one gives me -2 over -2, which is 1. Which one has a bigger rate of change? Which one has a bigger rate of change? Yeah, function 1a. So the thing is, the x's weren't going up by 1. Given this arithmetic sequence, find a sub n. All right, so what would be the easiest way to do this? Yeah, just use the formula. So any number is equal to the first number plus the common difference. Can you tell me what the common difference is? 3 times n minus 1. That was the formula. Does that show up on the reference sheet? Did they put the formula for everything? So 3n minus 1. I know some of you are testing on Monday. So we'll see when you guys finish and if you show up, and if that affects the practice test that we have that day.